Good afternoon. How is everybody? Great, awesome. I have some postcards up here, just so you can remember that you came to this session, just to refer to if you'd like to grab one of those. My name's Kara Jenkins. I serve as the Senior Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life here in Westchester. It's my 9th year here. When I first started, it was just me. We had 90% less members, so we've grown a lot over the last 8 years. We're really excited about that growth. I got to hire more staff, and so there's 5 professionals that work with the fraternity and sorority community here, and we're really excited about the membership opportunity for your student that's joining us. And so what we're going to talk about this afternoon is for you to know who we are and how we support the community. You're going to understand how your student can join, and then the health and safety components associated with membership, which is a lot of the times what parents are focused on. So when you leave here today, you'll be able to learn all those things. So our mission is to provide a values-based membership experience, emphasizing the campus and community engagement, academic success, leadership development, and meaningful interpersonal relationships. So we have a lot to do with intentional impact on making sure that they've learned something as a result of their membership. So the Division of Student Affairs talks a lot about the co-curricular experience. And I really believe fraternities and sororities, when done right, can provide that dynamic experience that hits students on all levels of student leadership and development. And so not just in one way, but in lots of ways. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's hard to reach 2,000 students with 5 staff members, but we do our best. And so most of the time we are working with the leadership of the groups. And we like to say we want students to have this heart-eye emoji experience to kind of translate to them in their language. And so we'll define that in a little bit. So our staff, where to find us? Everybody's been to Sykes? Yeah? Okay. So our office is located on the 2nd floor. Students can come in and ask questions whenever they'd like. Our phone number, email, social media is all there. We are hiring for an associate director at this point, and they will be in place by the beginning of the year. We have an assistant director and 2 graduate assistants. This is a larger staff than most campuses with 34 chapters and 2,000 members. A lot of times it's offices of 1.5 people. And so we have a lot of impact on the community, I like to think. We work with the governing councils, which I'll get to in just a second. But we advise chapters on an individual level, so we meet with the leadership weekly, and we're asking them about chapter culture and chapter operations and those things, and we communicate with their national offices about their expectations, and so we're sort of that conduit of what those expectations are, what the standards are, accountability processes, all of that. You are welcome to call, stop by, email us, ask questions. I want to make sure to open those lines of communication. So we break our fraternities and sororities up into what we like to kind of describe as little mini student governments. So part of the nature of fraternities and sororities is shared governance. And so a university can make policy, but really it's the peer-to-peer expectations that these student leaders expect out of one another, and so they will also create policy and standards, and they help plan programs as well and create community. So they're broken up by really just how the organization runs. So we have 10 interfraternity council groups. We have 7 multicultural based organizations, 8 historically African American groups, so MPHC, and then our Panhellenic Council has 10 member groups. So there's 17 sororities and 17 fraternities. So for example, Panhellenic, they recruit together. And so that's a major program that they do together. But our MGC and MPHC groups all individually recruit separately. So, yeah. So some quick facts. Like I mentioned, we have 2,000 members, about 800 when I first started. It's a large percentage of the student body, and they do better academically than the average Westchester student. 75% of them have a 3.0 cumulative GPA. And so that 3.28 is last semester's average GPA, but I think it's pretty significant to say that 3/4 of them have a 3.0. So they can't just be focused on the social, which I'll get to in a little bit. There is some financial investment for joining. And I call it an investment because I don't play into the stereotype that they pay for their friends. I feel like this is a lifelong commitment that they're investing in, and the skills they will learn as a result of membership is an investment in their future. And so that's a big range, right? When it's $1,500, most of the time that's a one-time, like that's all they pay for their collegiate experience. So depending on the type of group. But the $350 is like per semester. That's all. It's nice that we have, and I'll get to this in a minute, but they have a whole semester before joining if they need to work and pay that, write that check themselves. I encourage you to encourage them to do that. The more that they are invested financially, they invest in the experience and get more out of it. So, I remember writing that check myself, and it hurt, but I worked all summer and made that happen. And then the time commitment. I like to say it's like an extra class. The 3 to 4 hour time commitment is like the general member. They go to a chapter meeting, maybe one event a week. So it could be more if they're in a leadership role in the chapter, if they're planning that event or whatnot. So it is a time commitment. So we like to give them that first semester to figure out life at college and how to manage their time a little bit. All of my students would say joining had helped them figure out how to manage their time more effectively though. So how to join. On our website, you can view a full list of the fraternities and sororities. And I would encourage you and your student to go and click on those links, learn about each individual one that they're interested in. And they can speak to the members of those groups. There's a myriad of opportunities at the beginning of each semester to interact with them in an informal setting, like the student organization fair, and we have our own welcome week event. And if they are interested, the information will be out there for them, marketing wise. So like I said, each governing council group has different steps to take, and so as they're researching what group they're interested in, they have to say, oh, that's an interfraternity council group. Let me click on the interfraternity council recruitment steps. And so those are available on our website. And then last year, for the first time, we did in-person pre-membership education kind of sessions. So 6 or 7 of them we did. And you had to attend that in order to join. And this year we moved that online, and so it's available right on our website right now. I encourage you, when you go home, to click on it. It's me talking for 20 minutes, but it's all that information that we need students to have prior to joining. They have, and it's about expectations and all those health and safety areas. So then they have to take a quiz at the end to prove that they actually watched the video and prove that content. Our recruitment policy is that students have to have 12 Westchester credits or 24 transfer credits. All of your students are first semester students, right? So they will not be able to join until their spring semester. And we have a session in part 2 orientation, so if they're really interested, they can come and we'll speak with them directly. And the student leaders of those governing council groups help run that session, so they will be able to speak directly to their peers. Right. So our anti-hazing policy is in development. This is what is in our legal counsel's hands at this moment, but it's important to note and for students to understand that hazing occurs on this continuum. And a lot of times we don't take the little things in consideration as being serious. We're like, oh, that's just boys being boys. So our definition, we intend to cover all of this, and it's really about creating a coercive environment. Key point being anything a student does to join or to maintain membership, whether they want to do it willingly or not, has nothing to do with it being defined as hazing. So that power differential that exists in a group means I'm going to do that thing, even if it's running to Philadelphia to buy cheesesteaks, which seems harmless. It's still a subtle form of hazing, and one that would match our definition. So we don't need anybody doing anything that's going to be, a concern. It's going to take away from their academic priorities and all of that. So we have a zero tolerance policy. So individuals and organizations are held accountable if, through an investigation, they're found responsible for hazing. And there's lots of different ways students can report. Last year we had a total of 12 investigations, and we think that that is coming from reports from that pre-education that we did prior to students joining. And so the more we educate them about what is and what isn't hazing, the more they feel comfortable to say, even anonymously, that I participated in this and I didn't feel comfortable. Part of the new Pennsylvania hazing law, this is very small, but I'm going to tell you where it's coming, is to publicize all of the hazing-related conduct issues on campus. And you can sort of see that it's not, for this past year, it's not just fraternities and sororities, there's athletic teams on there as well. And so thanks to Jim and Evelyn Piazza and their lobbying with our state legislator, we were able to provide this information not just to students, but to parents as well. I've been to a number of educational programs where the Piazzas have spoken, and their main concern was wanting more information about the group in which their son was joining. And so we want to be able to provide that to you all. I do, though, caution that these groups, this is not supposed to be like, this is a blacklist, like don't let them join. In fact, these are the groups, depending on the outcome of the case, that are in rehabilitation, that we've called them out on the things they're doing wrong, and they are actively trying to change and get better. And a lot of times we don't know what groups are doing. And so I would rather know and rather have an intervention and have groups be on this list than not. And so just wanted to point that out. So this past year we did a survey that measured a lot of different things, but I think it's significant to say that 90% of our students know or believe that they were extremely or very knowledgeable about hazing, which means we're doing education on a chapter level, on an individual level, so they can identify it themselves. The thing that affects really most everything involved in fraternity and sorority being a positive impact on someone's experience is the culture of that group. And so groupthink exists when you get a group of 18 to 22-year-olds together. They can use that power for good or for evil, right? And so we are constantly checking and measuring what the culture of that chapter is through that individual advising and the accountability process. But this heart eye emoji experience can be seen how we define a positive chapter culture. So a true culture of care where people feel like they have a voice and they are engaging in activities and behaviors that align with that group's values, and that the leadership and education is structured through team building and not breaking people down. And really, if a student joins a group, they feel like they have the autonomy to make change and make what they would like that experience to be if it's not happening. So we really focus on chapter culture because it affects all the other pieces that tend to be issues for college students, not just in fraternities and sororities, but they tend to be emphasized. So sexual misconduct and mental health issues and those health and safety things, if you have a good chapter culture in place, it should be having a positive impact on your understanding of mental health issues, etc. And so when they're not having a positive heart eye emoji experience, there's lots of different avenues that they can communicate that. Office of Student Conduct, and I think they have a session in part 2. But our office and student leadership and involvement. So, bottom line, we want them to love this experience. And some other key points from that survey that I think are important, and this is self-reported, but I think it's important to know that they believe their organization does not place an emphasis on drinking. While they might provide a social environment, it's not the peer-to-peer, you're not accepted if you don't go to the party. They might provide that opportunity, but they don't put an emphasis on it. And they don't encourage their members to drink. So if you don't drink, you can still be in an organization, a fraternity or sorority, and still have fun. And so I just thought that was a key point. Part of that co-curricular experience is learning these skills that employers want to hire after your son or daughter graduates. They're going to learn these as a result of their membership. So learning how to communicate, work on a team, they take that leadership role. In some cases, there's 150 members in these chapters. They're going to have to learn how to manage conflict when they disagree with those people. Time management, like I said before, and delegation when they're working on those teams, and critical thinking and problem solving. And studying, they can't do well academically and not learn some study habits through the organization, more than just, we go to the library together. But there's groups that team members up according to majors, and that mentorship exists, and most of the time the grades go up after they join. So they're establishing a standard of academic excellence that if you don't have a standard of this GPA, then you're not going to be in a fraternity or sorority. So I think that's key to know. So our groups provide leadership experiences, positive social opportunities, those valuable skills, and an opportunity for students to network professionally. A lot of times they'll bounce around to different cities after they graduate, and it's an immediate network of individuals. There'll be a local alumni group that can provide that for them. And a lot of times, if they're putting it on their resume and defining it correctly with all of those skills that we mentioned, they're more likely to get hired if they're able to prove those skills. So some key takeaways: students are able to join their second semester. There is a weekly time commitment. They need to ask about finances and then have that conversation with you. We have a zero tolerance policy for hazing, and that joining is really a lifetime commitment. They think about it just through graduation, but it really is an investment in lifelong membership. So new this spring, we will be communicating with parents. As your student joins, they sign a membership card, and there'll be a parental release on there that says it's okay to contact mom and dad. We want to open up those lines of communication between you, your student, and us regarding their experience. And so we want you to talk with them about it. And if you're concerned about anything, you're going to let us know. Really, I want to know if, you normally speak to your son or daughter twice a week, and then all of a sudden they drop off the face of the planet after they start joining. I want to know that. And so I don't get a lot of parent phone calls. I wish I got more, because you're my eyes and ears to what is happening in that experience. And so we want to be able to provide you at least your son or daughter decided to join this group. Here's the start date of their new member education experience. Here's the end date. Here's who to contact if you have any concerns, because we want you to have that conversation with them. A lot of times they don't even tell their parents, and that's an issue, right? So that's kind of our new initiative that we are committing to you all. I will say that we used to have this combined session, and so our content is really based on the questions that you have, because I used to have 5 minutes to give this spiel, and now I have 30 minutes, right? So I want to know, you decided to attend this breakout session versus financial aid and study abroad. So what questions do you have that I can answer for you? These are some from the previous 2 sessions, and so I can start with those. But
are there any, our son will be a business management major. Is there anything that all the kids would be in that major?
There's an honor society for business students specifically. And I don't really know much about their operation because they're not housed under fraternity sorority because it's a co-ed group. But there's a lot of our fraternity men are business finance majors.
So there's not necessarily a business
Fraternity. There is nationally, we don't have that group here. He can start it if he'd like.
Are the houses off campus?
The housing question. So we don't actually recognize any fraternity and sorority houses. I know that seems weird. As you drive down High Street, you see a house with Greek letters on it, like maybe like 50 feet from Asplin Concert Hall. That the landlord allows them to put those letters on the house, but it's individual leaseholders, not owned by the fraternity, and so there's not a level of accountability there. So we do our best to help the leadership manage how to run an event if they choose to have one there, but we don't inspect the house or manage those houses. So there's one exception on Walnut Street because it's alcohol-free and it's owned by the National Fraternity. So we are always looking for the opportunity when new housing conversations on campus come up. I'm always at that table petitioning for on-campus housing opportunities. So I think that it is a part of membership, but of the 3 campuses I've worked at, I think that not having fraternity sorority housing focuses the members to be more values-based, and so they're less focused on what happens in a house and more focused on their service and academic components. So now, do they all live together off campus and throw their flags in a window? But one of our major priorities for the coming year is to work with their national offices more, to have them be invested in what's happening off campus, because a lot of times nobody really knows, and so there's not a whole lot of oversight there.
How about sororities today?
Same, yeah.
So you don't have to live in a fraternity house or sorority house to be part of it.
In fact, I would say 95% of them don't live in a house off campus that's known as the X house. There's an off-campus commuter student session, probably in part 2. You haven't had to, I guess, learn all of the intricacies of moving off campus yet. It's first semester or first year students are living. Do you have any commuter students? No? Yeah. So I would know that that's a conversation to have in the coming year. And that office will help identify landlords that are good to work with, et cetera. Because the off-campus borough relationship is a complicated one.
So what do they do in that 3 to 4 hour time?
Sure. So there's a lot of meetings, and so they'll meet as a chapter, as a group, and that's when they see everybody each week, and they go through an agenda of what the plan is for that semester, right? So they're always constantly hosting programs and events on campus that align with their values, and so a lot of the groups have a service or a philanthropy component, so they're planning that event to benefit St. Jude or Children's Miracle Network. And so then they'll have, maybe they're sitting on a committee, and they'll have a committee meeting. At least twice a year, they're focused on recruiting new members, and so they're in recruitment training and learning how to talk to one another, and doing all those skill-based things I talked about. So, and then just normal college student things they just do together.
So back to the houses off campus and parties being thrown there, how often do they get into trouble in these houses? Because all they talked about is how strict the borough police are earlier, so.
Who was
Obviously,
sharing
that
that?
comes into
The
play.
public safety session?
No, it was just the general session.
Okay.
Yes.
So fraternities and sororities have a lot more rules and regulations than the general student. So if they're going to host an event with alcohol, it has to follow a lot of procedures, including checking IDs and wristbanding, and they can only have a certain number of people there, which is hard in these borough homes to, when your chapter is 150 people, you can only have 100 people at your event. But they have to create a guest list, just like if we were to have a dinner party or somebody at our house, we would know who's there. So it's a lot of work to put on a fraternity or sorority related social event off campus. And so, you know, other groups don't have those health and safety policies that we're constantly updating and making sure that they fit and match what they're actually doing. So the police reports do get communicated to the Office of Student Conduct, and our group accountability process has been, I think, is a model for other campuses. So that police report gets generated, and our Office of Student Conduct partners with our office, and we go through that group conduct process. So whether they're found responsible or not, they're coming in and having a conversation with us about what happened that night and why did you get a noise violation. I would say a lot, the police response is about noise violations, and they're citing an individual student that lives there because they can't cite an organization that doesn't own that house. But a lot of times they're not arresting people. That's been my experience. So the groups are held accountable, and then that one person who took the noise violation citation. There's really only 2 days of the year that are highly active, homecoming, and then there's a day in the spring. So Westchester is not a campus where they're going to the football game on Saturday and tailgating and all day drinking. Like, that's just not the culture here, and so it's not a battle that the Office of Fraternity Sorority Life has had to really fight and deal with that you might have seen other places. Like, I used to start this presentation with a big Penn State logo with an X on it. Like, we're not Penn State. We're a little bit more we're low key. So they like to have a good time, but it's not solely placed in emphasis with fraternity and sorority.
Can you just answer the bullet, like the new member process?
So the campus has a policy that states any group that has a new member education experience. So there's like 20 some groups that aren't fraternities and sororities. They're like musical groups and some honor societies that can be no longer than 7 weeks. There's a lot of groups that nationally are getting rid of those weeks-long type of process. So 2 fraternities, it's like 1, you're immediately a member, and because the understanding is that you're continually learning about the organization and you're a member from day 1. I think that's probably where we will all be going eventually. That's just my opinion. But there's groups where it's 3 weeks. There's groups where it's 4 weekends. So it varies, but it can be no longer than 7 weeks. And it has to end 2 weeks before the last day of class. That's like a check and balance of refocusing for finals.
Set number of members depending on the housing.
The only organizations that do that are Panhellenic chapter groups, so the groups that recruit together. And that formalized process is really just a big math equation. So 100 women go through recruitment. We have 10 chapters, 10 people per chapter.
And Greek week?
So Greek week is, how many of you are a member of the fraternity sorority? Okay. So you probably, this used to be a thing, and a lot of campuses still do it. But it used to exist here as like a week-long party. So we've phased out of that because that's not our primary goal. And so we have traditions that are spread out throughout the year. And there's still a weekend in the spring that we call Greek Weekend, where they do Greek Olympics and they do a service component, and there's some leadership awards. And so if a student ever wanted to plan a Greek week and come up with events and programs that emphasize their values, and I would be all for that. But as educators, my role is to make sure they learn something, not to be a cruise director of like little like fun activities for them to do during a week, right? So that shift in higher education is happening there. Yeah. I thank you for coming to this session. No, hopefully, is it new information that they can't join until their second semester? Is that new? Okay. Again, we'll have a session in part 2 where we can talk to them directly. And so now you know you have some time to communicate for a semester and make sure that they know there's a GPA requirement. You better go to class if you want to join that fraternity or sorority. And they have time to research, and so do you, and ask us questions. I'd love to get a phone call to say, my student came, I was talking with them and they said this about this group, right? There's a lot of misinformation that gets thrown around in that pre-joining time frame, and so I would encourage them to really find out for themselves, not just hearsay, to speak with the members directly themselves, and not just go based on stereotype and reputation.
All the film graphics are on the webpage also.
Mhm.
The web.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stick around after, ask some questions one-on-one if you want. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.